Namaste, welcome to Perseverance IAS. Today is July 14th, 2021. The following are the important articles to be read in the Hindu newspaper for competitive exams. The first article is vaccination declines by 60% as states say they have no doses. So this is just an update in terms of what is going on with Indian inoculation process. Try to read this article from that perspective. This would certainly help you in giving a timeline of what has been happening in terms of vaccination since the central government adopted a new vaccination policy. The second article is Uttarakhand government suspends Kanwar Yatra. So try to understand what is this Yatra and how it is significant for the local this thing. So the second thing is Sputnik 5 to be made by SII. This is again an informative article. This will certainly increase our ability to vaccinate more people. From that perspective, read this article. Now moving on to editorials. I think today we have a good editorial in the sense that Moving on to the editorial, the first article that you have to read today is the upcoming crisis in Indian Federation. This is important to understand what are the challenges that India is going to face when it will have its delimitation exercise happening pan-India. Remember, the delimitation exercise is supposed to take place in 2026 based on 2001 census or 2011 census or 2020 census, but it is postponed. So we don't know on what basis they'll have delimitation process. But nonetheless, read this article to get an understanding of what has been the past and what would be the problems of future. Now, an unproductive idea. Read this article because it is important to understand how population control methods tend to generally fail when they go through the standard and tested method of incentives and disincentives. Now, how it should be done through empowerment of socio-economic factors of the population. That is why read this article from that perspective, make notes because it will certainly help in answer writing. Again, framing the legislation, forgetting the transparency. This is to understand a certain drawback in current policy framework structure of Indian government. From that point of view, please do read it. Mains के लिए it's little bit significance, but don't concentrate much on it. Now moving to OpEd, growth matters but income levels matter more. Again, mains perspective, get few data points from this. Apart from that, don't worry. Now, upholding trust in vaccination. This is again an understanding perspective. If you need, get few points. Otherwise, just read it for the sake of information. To gain a perspective, read it. Disable unconstitutional sections. Again, we knew about the section 66 of IPC. That is why we read this article from that perspective. This would be one way you could suggest to prevent similar things happening in the future. So for mains, you can get one possible solution to the problem. That is why you read this article and make notes. Moving on, India to display relics of Saint Kabir. First thing, how these relics are related to Georgia, why it is important, where it is found, who found it, location, historical background. 2 points. Cultural and historical perspective should be the backdrop of this article. From that point of view, do read it. Now, crackdown on Bangladeshi immigrants in Tamil Nadu. What is the problem? Why recent crackdown has been happening? Why these particular group of immigrants are problematic compared to the others one? Because they are forging documents to a greater extent, and that becomes an issue. You have to read it from that point of view. One is the national security aspect, second is the forging aspect, and its implication directly on drug peddling and other criminal activities. From that point of view, please do read this article. Now, anti-terror law must not be misused to harass people. This is a perspective from a sitting judge of Supreme Court of India. That is why we are reading this article. If you want You may present his opinion in a future answer, but not important for you to concentrate more time on this. Now, crackdown on GST evaders continue. What you need to read this from article is what are the provisions in GST that punishes the GST evaders, and from that perspective you read this article. Second, Assam bill bans sale of beef around temples. Two things. Is Assam the only state bringing this kind of cattle protection laws? What are the other states bringing in? And what are those laws? How different are they from each other? And Assam has also a bill that dates back to 1950, and how it is different from the current bill. What are the common factors and what are the differences in past and the current bill, and how different is the new bill will have on the cultural impact on Assam society. From that perspective, please do read this article. Now, Modi alerts northeastern states. Why is he alerting? What are the packages that are being announced in this article? From that perspective, please do read it. Have enough vaccine, says Bhutanese PM. The thing you have to concentrate is Bhutan doesn't have a diplomatic relationship with either US or China. Despite that, they have taken vaccines. Why they were forced to take the vaccines, and what are the donations? Now, India's first COVID patient test positive for virus again. This is for information sake. Possibly they may, I don't think they'll ask it, but just for information sake, please do read this article. Now, world, page number 11. Duba becomes Nepal PM for 5th time. And Supreme Court offers a way out of Kathmandu political impasse. Try to link up these two articles and try to link up this with the yesterday's editorial talking about the problems in Nepal, and not the first page article where the Supreme Court ruling gave in, and try to link up these all three articles with by creating a timeline as to what has been happening since last year, what is the implications of this crisis on the democracy of Nepal, and how it is impacting relationship with India. That is the perspective that you have to adopt when you are reading any news related to the constitutional crisis in Nepal. Now, don't want to fight inside cities, says Taliban. First thing, understand what is happening on ground in Afghanistan, how disadvantageous it is for Afghan government to abandon its own security forces. From that perspective, do read this. Okay. Now, Cuba blames US for anti-government protests. Now, what are these protests that they are talking about? Again, as I told yesterday, try to read the relationship between Cuba and America. From that perspective, it will be helpful for you. Now, business, page number 12. High fuel prices threaten recovery. Why recovery is being threatened by high fuel prices? What are they talking about this in this article? How inflation is related to finances of a household, how fuel prices are linked to a financial household, why the stress of inflation and high fuel price is extra complicated in the current financial year. Remember, because of pandemic, you have to link pandemic with medical expenditure, and medical expenditure along with inflation and high fuel prices. From that perspective, please do read this article. S&P keeps India rating at lowest investment grade. What are the general grades that they give? Why they had to reduce or maintain the same low investment grading that they give out to countries? That is the significance of this article. From that perspective, do read it. It is to give a certain example in your mains answer writing. This is for mains. Now, funding gap may stump housing for all goal. Again, read it from what is the scheme that they are talking about, why funding is at a crunch now, and what would be a possible way out. Informative main scale here, because it would implicate economic impact on social policies. India's trade with China soared 62% in H1. Now, what is this trade deficit? Why it has increased to this great extent? What was the impact of Atmanirbhar initiative on this trade deficit? Does it had any, or it is simply that we have no other option but to trade with China? And what are the long-term implications of such skewed and one-sided bilateral trade with China will have on India? From that perspective, please do read this article with greater detail. These are the important articles that one has to read in the Hindu newspaper for July 14th. Thank you. Please do subscribe, comment, share, and if you don't want to miss any new videos from my side, please click on the bell icon. Namaste.